All right, today we've got a really cool story from the software world. It's about two tech giants that you'd think would never ever work together, an open source superstar and a corporate powerhouse. It's all about a project that tried to do something that sounded, well, kind of crazy.
And that brings us to the big question, right? Why would you even think about running PHP code on the Microsoft .NET framework? I mean, for most devs out there, PHP and .NET are like oil and water. They just don't mix. They've got totally different philosophies, they serve different crowds, and honestly, they're usually seen as competitors. So what was the big idea here? Why would anyone attempt this?
So, let's break it down. You've got PHP over here. It's the darling of the open source world, right? It's the engine behind a huge chunk of the web. We're talking WordPress, countless other sites. It's famous for being super dynamic and flexible. Then, on the other side of the ring, you have Microsoft's .NET. This is the enterprise beast, the foundation for big, serious corporate apps. It's all about structure, static typing, you get the picture. They are pretty much polar opposites.
Okay, so what could possibly motivate someone to build a bridge between these two worlds? Well, it boils down to one simple, incredibly powerful promise: performance. We're talking pure, unadulterated speed. The whole idea was to take a PHP app and just make it run way faster by using the engine from a totally different ecosystem.
And the goal they were shooting for was just wild. We're talking a six-fold increase. 6 times faster. Think about that for a second. Imagine your website or application suddenly running 6 times faster without rewriting the whole thing. A number like that? Yeah, that's going to make people stop and listen. So the thinking went beyond just raw speed. Of course, boosting performance was number one, but it was also about integration, letting PHP apps live happily inside the .NET world. And think about what that unlocks. Suddenly, PHP developers could tap into all those powerful .NET libraries. And maybe, just maybe, it could help close the gap between two developer communities that didn't always see eye to eye.
So, let's introduce the hero of this story. It was a project called Phalanger, and the best way to think about it is as a sort of universal translator. Its job was to teach PHP how to speak fluent .NET. This wasn't just about getting them to play nice in the same sandbox. It was about a fundamental transformation.
Okay, so how did this thing actually work? Well, Phalanger was a compiler. And don't worry if that sounds super technical, the idea is actually pretty straightforward. A compiler is just a special program that translates code. It takes the stuff you wrote in one language, like PHP, and converts it into another language that the machine can understand, in this case, the language of the .NET framework. Let me walk you through it. So you take your standard PHP app, and I mean something big like WordPress. You feed all that code into Phalanger. It does its magic, and what comes out the other side isn't PHP anymore. It's been translated to something called CIL, which is basically the native language of .NET. Once that's done, the .NET framework just grabs it and runs it, hopefully with all the speed of a native .NET app. Pretty cool, right?
And you gotta understand, this wasn't some little side project someone hacked together over a weekend. Phalanger had a real journey, a whole life story. It started out as this academic idea and grew into a full-blown, commercially supported tool with actual users and big-name sponsors.
So it all kicked off back in the early 2000s, born out of a research project at Charles University. It really started to pick up steam, and by 2008, it was part of Google's Summer of Code. They even got it running on Microsoft Silverlight. Then a company called Jadu jumped in to sponsor it, wanting to make that PHP and .NET connection even stronger. And by 2009, the core team had spun off their own company, DevSense, to really push the project forward with commercial support.
And people were buzzing about it. The developer community was genuinely excited. You see quotes like this one from a conference attendee calling it cutting-edge technology. It really captured people's imagination, this whole idea of bridging two massive ecosystems and completely rethinking the rules.
But here's the thing about tech. It never, ever stands still. And as amazing as this project was, time was marching on. While Phalanger was busy perfecting its translation of the present, the future was already moving in a different direction. The reality is, the tech world moves incredibly fast. Phalanger was a masterpiece for its time, but its Achilles heel was that it was built for a specific version of PHP, PHP 5.4. And then, PHP started evolving like crazy. When versions 7 and 8 came out with massive changes, it just became impossible for a project like Phalanger to keep pace. Eventually, it had to be retired. But hold on, this isn't a sad story at all. The end of Phalanger wasn't a failure, not by a long shot. It was more like laying the foundation. Its entire journey, all the lessons learned, paved the way for what came next, a new project built for the modern age of both PHP and .NET.
And that successor is a project called PHP. It really is the next generation. You can see how the torch was passed. While Phalanger is now a legacy project, PHP is alive and kicking, actively maintained. It supports modern PHP 7 and later. And here's the key part. It's built on top of Microsoft's official compiler platform, Roslyn. That makes it a first-class citizen in the modern world of .NET and .NET Core.
And that really is the heart of the story, isn't it? Today's innovation is always built on the foundation of yesterday's experiments. Phalanger's Tale is just a perfect example of that. It was this bold, ambitious project that really pushed the envelope. And even though it's not the tool people use today, its spirit and all the hard-won lessons are literally the foundation for the tools that are being used right now.
So I want to leave you with this thought. Think about the tech you're using at this very moment. It's all built on layers and layers of older, sometimes forgotten technology. So it makes you wonder, right? What seemingly crazy experiment or unlikely alliance is happening out there today that's going to be the bedrock for tomorrow's next big thing?